For this experiment, I chose to make yogurt. By doing so, I first acquired whole milk, whole fat yogurt, a thermometer, and a glass jar with a secure lid. The first step in this process was heating the milk to about 180 degrees, which is going to be just below the boiling point of milk. This is going to make sure that the milk is sterilized and there is no current bacteria already in the milk. The next step was taking the pan off the stove and letting it cool down to about 110 degrees. This can take a few hours depending on the room temperature of your home. The next step was adding in my starter culture, which was 2 tablespoons of the yogurt that I got. I then made sure that my mixture was homogenized by taking a whisk and mixing it together as the best that I could to make sure that it was all mixed together and homogenized. The next step was pouring my mixture into the glass jar, as you can see here. And then the next step was incubating. So since I don't own an incubator, I used my oven as an incubator. I read online to turn my oven on the lowest temperature possible, which is about 150 degrees for most ovens, and then turning it off and then shutting the door. I then added in my glass jar with my mixture into the oven, and I left it in there for about 24 hours. I read online that it can take between 12 and 24 hours. At about 12 hours, it just didn't seem like the consistency of yogurt that we're used to. So I left it in there for about 12 more, checking back every few hours, and then after 24 hours total, it seemed to be the place that I wanted it to be. So every couple of hours, to make sure that there was a pretty constant temperature, or as constant as I could possibly get it while using this method, since it is a bit of a makeshift incubator, I would turn on my oven to the lowest setting again for a couple of minutes and then turn it back off. And I would do this every couple of hours, or as often as I could. The next step was obviously just making sure that it resembled yogurt. So I took it out and just looked at it a lot. And the first thing that you're going to notice, I feel that yogurt has a very distinct smell. So that was the first thing that I could tell that I was successful in making the yogurt, because it smelled exactly like yogurt and the consistency looked exactly like yogurt. So I was pretty pleased with my byproduct that I made, because I was a little bit worried that my incubator wouldn't be able to work very well. The microbes that are typically present in yogurt are going to be Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus. So the purpose of adding those the starter culture, that 2 tablespoons of yogurt, like I already told you guys, it was my starter culture. And by adding those in, and first I sterilized the milk to make sure that there was no current bacteria in the milk, and then I added in that yogurt that's going to have that good bacteria that I'm going to want to incubate and grow throughout this process and make it look like how it does. The metabolic process that the microbes are undergoing is lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation is a metabolic process by which glucose and 6 other carbon sugars are converted into cellular energy and the metabolic lactate. This is an anaerobic fermentation. What changes occur in food during the fermentation? So some of the byproducts that are created during this process are carbon dioxide, alcohol, and lactic acid. And because the amount of lactic acid is rising, you're going to see a decrease in the pH balance. You're also going to see a decrease in the oxygen as well. The temperature, since I am using not as reliable of an incubator. I don't believe that my temperature change is going to be as similar to one that you're going to see in a lab with an actual incubator, because I was having to change the temperature. It was getting cooled off if I didn't turn it back on right away, so it wasn't at a constant temperature. It was constant enough to make sure that the fermentation was able to happen, but it wasn't ideal. So I would say that my temperature, because of my methods, is not going to be the same as if you would do it in class. Although I would say that I was very successful in making the yogurt. I haven't actually tried it. I can't have dairy, but I would say that it looks just like it and smells just like it. So a change that I would make if I were to make yogurt again is try to do it with some sort of dairy alternative. I didn't do that this time because I was afraid that it wasn't going to be as easy to make yogurt with like a coconut milk or an almond milk or something like that, or even soy milk, because I was reading online that whole milk is really the best way to make yogurt, so I just kind of went with what I thought would be the easiest. So yeah, here is my final product. So you can see it's nice and solid and has that yogurt consistency.